So this is a gathering now for the second Yahrtzeit of Daniella, and the idea is for her friends, friends of the family, to get together to learn Torah, לעילוי נשמת. What does that mean? It means to learn Torah and to think about ideas and hopefully be inspired, maybe even to think about things differently going forward, and to be doing so as a zchut for Daniella to appreciate the midot, the traits that she had, and to be gathering together, specifically in order to commemorate her and her Yahrtzeit, and to use that as an opportunity for us to gain something and to grow. So that is a zchut for her. So it should be our Torah learning should be a zchus, לעילוי נשמת, דניאלה שינא, יהושע פאליק, Mirz Hashem, and she should see a lot of zchusim in Shemaim. I want to discuss a topic which I think is a very basic topic in Judaism, but really it's not even basic to Judaism. It's somewhat of a universal idea. I'll just start with sharing with you a question and answer, a question that one time a student asked me that really kind of threw me for a loop. And she said to me one time, she was a few years out of the seminary, and she came back to Israel in the summertime to visit, and she asked me a question as follows. She said, if a person believes in the Torah and believes in Judaism, so then that means that we believe that of the 6-7 billion people that there are on this planet, right, and so many people dedicating their lives to all different forms of spirituality, all different forms of connection to something, and except for this tiny band of what we call truth, right? Torah, Judaism. All the rest of that is sheker. That's the way that Hashem set up the world. That's the way that it makes sense that God wants the world to be with, billions of people. 99.999 don't get it, and only 0.01%, the Jewish people. And even in the Jewish people, the Orthodox say only Orthodox Judaism. So how does that make sense? And she was crying as she asked me this question. She really felt this in a very visceral way. And I didn't have an answer for her on the spot. I was very moved by the question. I said, I really hear. And, I set out to, speaking to different Rabbanim about it and looking in different Sfarim. And I want to share with you what Rabbi Shmuel Irons, he's a rabbi in Detroit, had to say. And he said a very interesting thing about this, which I want to use as an introduction to what I would like to speak about. And he said that, there's a big point that this person is missing. He said, what are the fundamental tenets of Judaism? What are the fundamental things of Judaism? That there's more than just the physical world, right? There's a soul, we have a neshama, that there's some sort of accountability, there's something that happens beyond just what we see here in this world. There's some sort of an element of spirituality, something beyond just the five senses that exists. So he said, if you think about it, isn't that the fundamental of every religion, right? Aside from atheism, which accepts nothing beyond what they can sense and smell, etc. Yeah, but every religion accepts these basic fundamental ideas of Judaism, that there's more than just the physical world, that it matters what we do over here beyond just the here and now and our experiences. Right? These are ideas that are across the board, basically to any religious system, even religious systems that are not monotheistic. They all believe that there's something more than what we see. There's something more than just what we see over here. And he said, so that already puts them in the camp of 80-90% MS. There's true. Now, okay, are they following the 7 mitzvos? Are they not? Etc. That's a whole different story. But the whole premise of her question, he said, is based on a misunderstanding, of what the fundamentals are and what Hashem expects of people. So this idea, this concept of the physical and the spiritual, of having two components, that there's more than just what we see, and certainly to a person, there's more than just this guf, there's more than just this body. So this is an idea I just want to speak about a little bit here, and try to develop, and like I said again, maybe even to take something real from this going forward. So I'd like to start with a very interesting perush. I think I quoted it also last year at the Yahrtzeit Shiur as a perush that I happen to be a very big fan of. His name is Rav Moshe David Vali. He was a doctor and a rav and a mystic in Padua, Italy, in the 1600s, during the times of the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. A very, very fascinating individual, very fascinating svarim on all of Tanakh. So he writes the following, talking about these parashios, talking about the story of Shibud Mitzrayim, the story of Klal Yisrael in Egypt, and he zooms in on a particular point where it says that Klal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu came at the end of Parshas Shmos. Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he has good news for them. He has good news for Klal Yisrael. He said, Hashem told me, he's gonna take us out, and they ignore Moshe Rabbeinu. They don't listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu goes back to Hashem and he says, Hashem, it's because of my I'm kaved pev, kaved lashon, I can't speak well, and that's why they're not listening to me. And the pasuk says, no, that Hashem knew that it was mikotzer ruach umerov avodah. That it wasn't because Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't speak properly, it was from this thing of kotzer ruach. They were suffering from a condition called kotzer ruach, that there was some lack of ruach, something about this. Let's take a look what he says. If you have the paper in front of you, we're just looking in the first source. What is this idea of kotzer ruach? That had a tangible effect, a physical effect on Klal Yisrael, that they weren't able to hear Moshe Rabbeinu. So he writes like this: that Hashem knew the real reason here. Hatam ha'amiti lama lo shamu elav she'eno ela mekotzer ruach. Hashem knew the reason was because of this idea of kotzer ruach u'me'avoda kasha ki ha'hefsek ha'klipa hamonea kabbalas ha'nefesh min ha'ruach shelo. So he's saying an idea over here. He's using Kabbalistic terminology, but we can understand it the same way. He said there was some sort of a hefsek, there was some sort of a klipa, some sort of a shell that was preventing the nefesh from the ruach. Right? There was a nefesh over there, and there's a ruach that's supposed to be inhabiting that nefesh. Right? There's something that's supposed to be there, and it was prevented. The only ruach that was arriving at the nefesh was just a thin strand of ruach that was reaching to them. She'ein bo safek lo lenachim v'lo l'sameach es nefesh, and that's not enough to be misameach and to satisfy the nefesh. So what he's saying is as follows, right? We're familiar with this concept that there's different levels to a human and different levels to our neshama. There's this concept of like nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. A lot of people have heard of these concepts: naran, chay, nefesh, ruach, neshama. So nefesh means like the lowest level, like the nefesh habahamis, like the libido, the animalistic life force that is universal to anything that's living, anything that's sentient, any animal, any human has something that's called a nefesh. Now a human has something higher than that called a ruach. Ruach is where speech comes from. Ruach memalala, Onkelos writes, when it speaks about the nefesh chayim that Hashem breathed into man, a ruach is a higher level already. That's already a person's like intellect, a person's ability to speak, captures that concept. So what is kotzer ruach? Rav Ali is explaining kotzer ruach is when a person is suffering from a lack of ruach in his nefesh. There's something going on the spiritual plane where there's not enough of his soul, so to speak, inhabiting his body. Right? There's kotzer, only a little bit is getting in there, and that has a physical effect. That has an effect on a person's ability to hear, has an effect on a person's ability to be happy, on a person's ability to feel alive, because in a certain sense, they're not fully alive. In a certain sense, they're lacking that ruach chayim, they're lacking that element of life that gives them that chiyus. That's what he writes. Now I want to see this now developed further in a fascinating sefer. The Rav Klonis Kalman Shapir, the Piazetzner Rebbe, was a Rebbe in a town called Piazetzner, right outside of Warsaw. And before the war, he wrote a sefer called Chovas HaTalmidim. He became famous, more so maybe even because during the war he was in the Warsaw ghetto, and he wrote his drushos down. He used to give speeches and chizuk and try to inspire the people and keep them going. And he hid all of his speeches in cans. And he left a note in each can that said, "If you find this, get it to Israel to my brother, such and such a name." And he perished in the war. He was in the camp of Majdanek, and after the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, in reprisals for that October, they killed in a matter of 2 days, I think 18,000 people in Majdanek, and the Piazetzner Rebbe, Hashem Yenakim Demo, was one of those people that was taken out to be killed then, but a tremendous tzaddik. But then people realized after the war that he was way before his time in the field of chinuch, in the field of education, and he had this sefer called Chovas HaTalmidim that people really hadn't heard of so much before, but after the war, when people found, so one of the soldiers, a Jewish soldier, found those cans, or a soldier found it and gave it to it, and it made its way to Israel, and that's the sefer Eish Kodesh. Anybody who's familiar with the sefer, Shul and Ramapei Chemesh, also there's a sefer called Eish Kodesh. Those are the drushos of the Piazetzner Rebbe on Shabbos in the Warsaw Ghetto. One of the most powerful svarim that we have. But before the war, he wrote the sefer called Chovas HaTalmidim, which is his perspective on chinuch, and it's a very, very progressive sefer, very progressive. He speaks about making sure that students feel success in other areas, not just in learning, and not just very, very fascinating his perspective. So this is in the 4th chapter. He writes, he's talking here about laziness, about atzlus, and how to overcome when a person just doesn't feel like doing anything, and where does it come from? When a person knows that something is good for them, and they know that it's it's proper. Let's just take even exercise. He's talking about spiritual person. A person knows it's good for them, but they just don't feel the motivation to do so. So where does that come from? So let's take a look and see what he says. We're not going to read the whole thing. We'll just jump around into little pieces. But this is again the Chovas HaTalmidim from the Piazetz Rebbe. Very beautiful sefer. So look what he writes here. Kol inyan. We're going to start with the paragraph. Kol inyan asiya beish. Anything that a person does, any aspect of asiya, anything that we do, bein asiya saguf bepoel. Whether I'm talking about a physical action, bein asiyas hamoach bedas, or even thinking about things. Right? When I'm thinking, processing information, I'm also doing something, even though it doesn't express itself physically, but I'm doing something in my mind. Yeah. הנפש היא העושה על ידי המוח, הלב ושאר חלקי הגוף המסלבשת בהם. So he's now calling it the nefesh, right? He's not using the same terminology that we saw in Ravali, who is distinguishing between the nefesh and the ruach. I don't want that to confuse us. He's using nefesh to mean the person's neshama as opposed to their guf. Right, let's just make that idea clear. Don't get caught up on the word nefesh. Right, the person's neshama. So he says anything I'm doing, anything I do, any physical motion I do, any thinking I'm doing, it's not really the basar, it's not the meat and the neurons in my brain that are making this happen. It's the nefesh, it's the soul that's in me, right? That makes things happen. And he goes on to explain that it's obvious we know that when the soul leaves the body, so then we say that person's not alive any longer. What do you mean? The body is no longer alive. The soul, that part of the body that was a part of it all along, that's still very much alive, right? That still goes on and lives, and that's part of what can give us a nechama, can give us a sense of a comfort that we know even a terrible loss is something that, however painful it is temporary. It is not forever. There's going to be a time that will be reunited because those neshamos are still alive. That spiritual part of a person never dies. It doesn't die together with the guf, right? But the guf and the neshama work together, and the guf can't do anything without the neshama. And so skip down a little bit. He says, the same idea. When a person is sleeping, so we say, what's going on in that time? Their guf is still here. There's some of their neshama is still there. There's Chazal tell us it's the 60th of death, sleeping. So some of my neshama is there, but the rest of my neshama, again, whatever these words really mean, goes up. It goes somewhere else, and therefore my body is now not able to function in the same way. And he says, "V'amisrape," but a person who is shvach, a person who's weak, like right in the middle of the paragraph there, "Gam b'hakitzo hu kamo she'amru Chazal yoshev batul kiyashin dami." Right, a person, even when they're awake, can sometimes be partially asleep. A person who doesn't have koach, he doesn't have any, he feels all heavy, like he doesn't feel like doing anything. Lo yashin mamish, he's not literally sleeping. Ara nafsho yoser mesher b'yashin mamish. His nefesh is there more than if he were actually sleeping. Avolo kam avlo ara lagamre, but it's certainly not there fully. It's certainly not inhabiting him in a full way. Nim velo nim, tir velo tir. He's half awake, half asleep. And now he explains on the bottom, misrape. What is this lashon of misrape for a person who's weak? He says meloshen rafa v'chalash. It means rafa means to hold on to something softly, chalash in a weak way. Lo chol shas haguf. It doesn't refer to the weakness of the body. Raka nefesh. When we say a person is misrapa, a person is famater in Yiddish, right? A person is shvach, a person is weakened. It's not the body that's weakened. It's the nefesh. Shelo hit amtza lakum lechos beklei hamoach v'aguf lachricham lisamu v'ladaktik. Meaning that the nefesh, the soul, is not fully inhabiting that body in order to give it the chiyus that it needs, in order to give it that energy, that vim, that's going to give it that ability to be motivated and to move. Okay, so we're seeing this idea that it's not just some esoteric abstract idea that we're comprised of a soul and a body, right? It's a very real thing that has an effect on us on a daily basis. Our ups and downs, our ability to be in a good mood, be in a bad mood, like Ravali writes, our ability to be happy, to allow ourselves to be up, has to do with this spiritual element of how much is my ruach, how much is my neshama inhabiting my guf, how much is it, a part of me or not. And everybody knows what it feels like, ups and downs, and a person is all motivated and into things, and they feel happy, and they feel, like they can get things done, or a person feels down and shvach, and that they don't have that simcha. See, they're explaining that it's a matter of ruchnius that's going on over here. There's a spiritual element of this, of how much the soul is inhabiting the body or not. Now, based on this understanding, I would like to, this is like my own insight, but I think it's something that can be a powerful idea in the bracha of Asher Yatzar. We say this bracha of Asher Yatzar many times a day, right? The halacha is every time a person uses the restroom, they have to make this bracha afterwards. Asher Yatzar es ha'adam b'chachma. It's really a bracha on biology, a bracha that's expressing our gratitude to Hashem and our amazement at Hashem at how He created the human body with all of the parts and all the things, and how they work together. And it's a bracha that we make many times over the course of the day. So I'd like to share with you an insight into this bracha. Something that I try to think about when I'm thinking about this bracha, and maybe if this is something that we can think about or focus on or see, and again, like I said at the beginning, to see this as a schus לעילוי nishmas Daniella, to take a new insight and a new idea, and to think about that when I make brachos in the future, think about that when I daven. So I think it's something that is a schus that can go perpetually as well. The idea is as follows: the bracha itself starts out, in a very straightforward way. Asher Yatzar ha'adam b'chachma. He created a person with, incredible intelligence and wisdom, and He made nikavim, chalulim, full of all the parts. And if anything goes wrong, if anything opens that's supposed to be closed, or closed that's supposed to be open, so as we know, that is a tragic. It leads to tragedy in a person, and we're appreciating when everything goes right, all the other times. And then we go on to say, if something would happen, we would not be able to exist. And then we say at the end, Baruch atah Hashem rofei chol basar. Hashem is the healer of all flesh. Hashem is the doctor. Umafli la'asos. Umafli la'asot. He said at the end these two words, and He acts wondrously. Umafli la'asot. Right? He heals the basar, and He acts wondrously. So the Shulchan Aruch goes through inside the text of the Shulchan Aruch. It's on the flip side of this. It's a very, very long sif in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Vav, right towards the beginning, where the Shulchan Aruch goes uncharacteristically and explains this bracha line by line. We're not going to go through it inside, but if you want to, it's very interesting. The Shulchan Aruch himself, in the text of the Shulchan Aruch, it's a strange thing. It's usually just halachos, but here he goes through and he explains line by line this whole bracha of Asher Yatzar, and he explains his understanding of mafli la'asos, what this wondrousness is of Hashem, and he says it means that how the body works. But I want to look at the very, very last line where it says Hagah, which is the last three lines over here, which is a little bit bold. The Hagah in Shulchan Aruch, we know, means that this is the Ramah. Rav Moshe Israel is now speaking, and he's giving his explanation. Look what he writes here. V'od yesh lefarish, you can explain further that what does this mean? Shemafli la'asos, what does it mean, this idea of mafli la'asos? V'masha shomer ruach ha'adam bekirbo, that Hashem keeps this ruach of a person inside of him. V'kosher davar ruchani b'davar gashmi, he does this peladic thing, this crazy thing, that he's able to combine something that is completely ruchani, my soul, with my body, which I know is physical, which has flesh and blood, and somehow he binds these two together. How does he do this? Because he's the ultimate doctor. He knows how to work the body. That's how a person remains healthy, when his neshama is bound and kept inside of him. So the Shulchan Aruch is telling us this idea. The Ramah writes that this bracha really has two parts to it. And with this, I want to finish with just this idea of what we can have in mind when we say these words. The bracha is a bracha on the workings of the body, right? And that's very clear from the words that are used, nikavim, chalulim, which, by the way, a person can think it means just more than the nostrils and the ears, the whole body, every organ. We now know from every cell also has holes and parts, things that without which any one of them things go wrong. Right? All of these things, but that's not the only thing we're focusing on. we say rofei chol basar. Right, but we're also saying umafli la'asos, Hashem, you are also the one who binds up the neshama with the guf. And again, that's not just an esoteric thing. That's talking about our emotional health. It's talking about our emotional health, our psychological health, our simchas hachayim, right? Our mood is determined by the mafli la'asos. It's determined by the amount that Hashem allows my neshama to inhabit my guf, to be a part of me. And when we're saying this bracha, and again, for me, it's something that I try to think about, not just davening for people who are sick that they should be healed, not just keeping in mind physical health, but also the mafli la'asos is not just an esoteric thing, but we're davening, no, Hashem, keep that pella, keep that combination going, keep my neshama together with my guf, keep me in a good place emotionally and psychologically, and for everybody, keep a person in that way, and that's really what we're davening for. So I just, I think it's an opportunity that when we say this bracha, and it's a bracha that we say, many times a day, several times a day, and it's an opportunity to, again, to recognize and appreciate and daven to Hashem, and we're seeing now not just for our physical health, but also for our combination of our ruach and our nefesh, combination of our physical and our spiritual, to keep them together, and Mir Hashem, keep us healthy, keep Klal Yisrael healthy, and we shouldn't have to get together for gatherings like this. Mir Hashem should have Geula Shlema, Mir Hashem, not know of any more tzaros with Mashiach Tzidkim here. Amen.